Wagwan Blood, producer T here with my first breakdown of my all-time favorite show, and hopefully yours too. The Mandem finally let me dissect the show season by season, and it's gonna be a sticky one still. What show am I referring to? Well, the greatest UK crime drama to ever exist, isn't it? Top Boy. Written and created by Ronan Bennett in 2011, Top Boy and Top Boy Summerhouse is a crime drama series about two drug dealers in East London. The series is set on the fictional Summerhouse estate in the London borough of Hackney. The show follows the lives of Duchesne and Sully, who run a thriving underground drug business in the courtyards of the Summerhouse estate. And the show explores gang violence in London. Top Boy is a slang term in the UK for the number one drug dealer in the area. The top G, the crime boss, the kingpin, the shot caller. I actually didn't see this show for a number of years later, till around 2014 when Netflix acquired it from the BBC for. The show itself actually got dropped in 2013, and it only had 2 seasons, which consisted of 4 episodes apiece. But since then, it's become my comfort show, and I've lost track of how many times I've watched it. And now that it's on its 5th and final season this September, it's only right I break into it. So if you haven't seen Top Boy, then you gotta stop watching the video here, because I'm about to get into some heavy spoilers. One word of advice is, though, the first 2 seasons, since they were still owned by the BBC, they are under a series called Top Boy Summerhouse. And when you see just Top Boy, that's actually the later 3 seasons that came out that were done by Netflix and also produced by Drake. And if it wasn't for Drake, the show would have still stayed canceled, but somehow our Champagne Poppy brought this show back. And that's what I really call stunting. I gotta give it to him for that. Let's get into it. Season 1, we start out with a killer track bumping loud from the London artist Ghost Poet, whose music is featured throughout the first 2 seasons, and I highly recommend that you check him out. Then it's followed by scenes of our main characters starting their morning in the fictional estate where they all live, called Summerhouse. We see Raynell, a 14-year-old boy who lives with his single mother Lisa, and you will recognize Lisa, Sharon Duncan Brewster, who went on to play the Star Wars Senator Pamlo, and in the movie Dune she played Leah Keynes. He's eating cereal and looking down upon a few of the estate drug dealers hanging around. We then cut to the scenes where we see our soon-to-be top boys hanging out until the scene is broken up by a large car pulling up, then robbing 2 of our lower Summerhouse gang members, one of which happens to be Letitia Wright in like her first acting role ever. And you know, Letitia Wright goes on to be our Shuri from Marvel's Black Panther. And she gives like my favorite line throughout the whole series, and it's, "He slapped me in my face, cuz." And it's when she gets popped by one of the gang members.
Fucking slapped me in my face, cuz.
So fucking what? Yo!
We learn that the gangsters who robbed them are from another rival gang called the London Fields, with their leader Kamali. London Fields would continue to be an on and off antagonist throughout the series for our Summerhouse gang, but more on that later. We cut back to Raynell trying to wake up his mother out of bed, who's going through some heavy depression for reasons unknown to the audience so far. He's trying his best to get her out, but to no avail. Next, we get introduced to what I'd assumed is the lieutenant of Summerhouse, a man named Lee, who's currently chastising the lower soldiers, Duchesne and Sully, who go on to be our 2 main characters throughout the series. With them being robbed, they are told they now owe the real top boy of Summerhouse, a man named Bobby Rakes, $3 grand.
Yeah, Bobby, $3 grand.
How can we owe $3 grand when
We then see Lisa, Raynell's mother, have a full-on breakdown at the grocery store, and then she's taken into mental care where she'll spend the next couple episodes at, and leaving our young Raynell on his own. We are then introduced to his best friend Jim, and I love this fucking kid. He was very money hungry and he just wants to get paid by any means, and he's famous for saying, "If someone gives you money, take it, bruv."
Whenever someone offers you money, you take it. Especially when it's someone like the Shay.
With his mother now in the hospital, a family friend and former enforcer of Summerhouse, a man named Leon, who works at the same mental hospital, does his best to keep Raynell out of trouble. And man, do I admire Leon for like just stepping up like this, and I grow on to just love this character. Raynell and Jim are later approached by Duchesne and Sully, who are able to pay Bobby Rakes back and promoted after taking care of one of his rivals for them. Attention to detail, isn't it?
Attention to detail, isn't it?
Jim is all too eager to join up to get his paper, while Raynell is a bit hesitant. Leon then makes a plea to his former mates to let Raynell be, and they do. Jim, however, gets in it, like through and through, and gets tossed the ropes by Letitia Wright, and we can see a little budding romance between the two. However, things get pretty fucked up when Kamali comes around again and robs them once more. Duchesne and Sully this time suspects it's just not random, but there might be a snake in their midst. Episode 2 starts off with Duchesne and Sully getting chastised by top boy Bobby Rakes about getting robbed for a second time. This time not for $3,000, but for $40,000. He lets them know that now they have 2 weeks to recover their funds, and when they get back to the car, Sully rightfully knows that there is a rat, but he suspects our young Jim, and this is where I start to hate Sully personally and prefer Duchesne more. Duchesne counters that with, he thinks there's a rat too, but it's definitely someone closer. We jump back to Raynell, who's at school, who's being persuaded by that MILF Heather that they met in the first episode while she was buying lights. Now, I'm from Denver, so seeing those lights, I knew what she was up to, and I was right. With her being pregnant, she asked Raynell to help her growing her weed farm, and he obviously obliges. We then see Lee, the underboss for Bobby Rake, go on and attack and brand Duchesne's brother for the missing money, while Duchesne and Sully are just discussing if they're ready to kill to get their money back. However, Duchesne then demonstrates why he has the making to be the next top boy, because he just goes and quickly gets revenge on Lee for attacking his brother. The deadline to get Bobby Rakes' money back is getting closer, and Duchesne and Sully are scouring the city for Kamali to no avail. At one point, we even see them enlist 2 girls that they hooked up with, one of them being Alarica Johnson, who later becomes the main actress, Autumn Nite, in another one of my favorite shows, P-Valley. I didn't even have a clue she was even from England until after I had looked her up in P-Valley and then discovered she had a Top Boy credit. I had to go back and rewatch this just to find her, and I thought, wow, this show's just producing star after star. Next, a very peculiar scene happens, one that it didn't get revisited through the next couple seasons like most things do, and it's Duchesne and Sully. They're walking around the estate, and then Duchesne notices an older gentleman, and by the way they're kind of talking with each other, we can assume that this might be Duchesne's father walking with like a way younger half-brother with him. And, they exchange a few pleasantries, and Sully tries to bring it up, but Duchesne just denies who he was, and that's it. It's never really seen again. Meanwhile, Lisa is doing some physical therapy to cope with her mental breakdown, which we find out that was brought on by her abusive ex. She gets a day to come home, but Raynell is busy with the farm and they miss each other. Now, with the clock ticking against Duchesne and Sully, they hatch a plan to kidnap Kamali's cousin and ransom him back for the drugs. But of course, things go south. Sully is the one that takes things too far, and they kind of end up with their first dead body on their hands as the episode ends. And for me, this last season was just done so well, from like the music score to the cinematography. It's like we have this peaceful, almost ethereal build-up of the music that like crescendos into this dark, heavy riffs as we see like Sully and Duchesne just stare into this car that they set on fire and burning the body, and they slowly walk away. Just pure brilliance right here. Episode 3 opens with Duchesne in church with his mother, who we see have a really sweet relationship, unlike with his father. We also learn that his mom doesn't like Sully just like me. We find out how serious Bobby Rakes can be because he's sitting there waiting for Duchesne and his mother, and they have a conversation about getting his money back and making up for what he did to Lee's face. We cut to Raynell and Heather touring a flat that she wants to purchase, and that's far away from the dangers of Summerhouse, but she may not have the money because she wants to wholesale to one specific person, but Raynell offers to help by wanting to sell to the kids on Summerhouse. She quickly shuts down that idea, and of course, we're going to find out why that's a bad idea. With Kamali's cousin dead, Duchesne and Sully send their young G's out to scout the memorial and the London Fields kind of main headquarters to see if Kamali pops out to pay respect to his cousin. Sully is further pushing the idea that Jim is the snake, and Duchesne tries to dissuade him from acting on this, and we can see that this is the beginning of the rift between the two, as Sully kind of sees them as equals and partners, but Duchesne feels he's more of the leader. Sully then dispatches Driz to go after Jim at school, and we see him just pop the mess out of this poor teacher. We then get a pretty depressing scene next of Sean's mother at his memorial with Duchesne soldiers Letitia Wright keeping a close eye on them. One thing that sticks out to me is like how even overseas gang violence, drug dealing is a problem, just like here with innocent lives being taken on every side. Later on, we get this cutscene between Raynell and his soon-to-be girlfriend Precious, where we actually find out what happened to his father, and this explains the line Duchesne gave us in the first episode that he shanked up his dad, because we learned that it was in self-defense of his mother who was being like strangled by this man, and Raynell stabbed him, and we can probably see that this is probably what led to her depression and that mental breakdown. After a quick scene of Duchesne and his mom cooking, we later see that Sully is a father himself and still pretty friendly with his baby mother. An interesting tidbit is that the song Girl by Jamie XX uses the line Sully says to his daughter, which is, "You're the most beautiful girl in all of Hackney," at the beginning of it.
Beautiful girl in Hackney,
And I remember just hearing this on the radio and was like, where have I heard that line from? And I was like, oh duh, it's from Top Boy. Now here I gotta warn you, if you hate violence to animals, just go ahead and skip about 30 seconds because after we get such a sweet scene with Sully and his daughter, we cut back to Jim, who was just escaping his chase with Driz. He goes back to his secret hideout, and then we discover his precious Marley has been hung to death. Man, so sad. This gives us like the depths and the depravity that this gang will go to, and we're gonna continue to see this escalate throughout the series of the show. Further on, we see Raynell officially ask Precious to date him, and this moment gets ruined when Driz starts to shake them down about Jim and him being a snake, but it's broken up by Duchesne saying even if he's lying, he's doing the right thing by always backing his boy.
It's his boy, innit? That's what you do, you back your boy.
After a bit of some shot exposition of Summerhouse and the soldiers not following Kamali, Duchesne and Sully finally get the call from their younger soldier, Michael, that Kamali is at his girlfriend's house. Now, one thing about Top Boy is that the little things from the first season will always come back in some form or another, so keep Michael in mind for next season. The gang arrives and breaks in, and I always thought this was so weird that there was this dude sitting on his homeboy's girlfriend's couch while his homeboy is upstairs smashing. But next we see him take a butcher knife deep into the arm, and I just thought Driz was such a dick by calling this man a pussy and telling him to shut up. It's like, bro, you nearly chopped this man's arm clean off and he's just not supposed to scream.
Shut up, man. What weed is this?
Next, we see the guys rush in on Kamali mid-smash with his girlfriend Kayla, who I said will come back to in the next season, but she gets replaced by a different actress who stars in another UK comedy you gotta check out called Chewing Gum, and a little bit more on that next season. After beating Kamali up, who does not give them an answer, we see them do some of the most gangster shit ever. They bury this man alive for what seems like a few hours, and upon getting him out, he immediately squeals. So I really can't fault this plan. But next we see Sully hand Driz a gun, and he does the needed deed. Sully immediately takes back the gun, and it's giving me the impression that he's forcing Driz to do this. Later, Sully and Duchesne go to Trust Tires and find none other than the Lieutenant, Lee, with their food, revealing that he was the rat the whole time. Sully was right about there being a rat, but he was definitely wrong on the suspect. Sully then immediately encourages Duchesne to make the shot, and then Sully himself finishes it without hesitation, and they take back their food. Duchesne is left there for a minute with like a look on regret, and this plays into Sully being more ruthless one out of Duchesne, while he seems to like reflect a lot more on the consequences of his actions. With their food back, plus some of the other gangsters' food, they go out and celebrate. And one of the Summerhouse soldiers gets called outside by a girl, and he ends up getting stabbed by another member of London Fields, who I believe was Ninja, and because we've seen him with Kamali before. Now, I said a lot of things always get brought back up, but they only kind of like mention this a little bit in the next episode, and from here on out, London Fields doesn't really confront them anymore until we get to season 3. We start our final episode of the season with Top Boy Bobby Riggs loading his gun to go meet with Duchesne and Sully about what happened to Lee. Duchesne explains that he was the snake, but Bobby questions, so why did you shoot him, implying it wasn't his call to make. But Sully jumps in, being hot-headed, reminding him that it was the only call that he was going to make anyway, so why raid around for it, and that it's Rake's fault since that was his boy. Duchesne quickly sushes Sully, and once he leaves, Duchesne reprimands Sully that, that's their boss and their supplier, but, Sully's just kissing his teeth at him. We cut to Raynell and Jim eating at Raynell's with Lisa finally back from the hospital. Raynell tells his mom that he needs to go study at Jim's house. Then Jim and Raynell run into Driz and Chantel outside. Driz calls them over and obviously lies about not being involved in the killing of his dog, and then gives Jim a stack of money. And next we see some really good growth from Jim, because remember, he said twice or more that whenever somebody gives you money, you take it. In which we know, don't do that, because you will eventually owe someone. But, as him and Raynell depart ways, you see him take that money and toss it in the trash. Jim's finally learned that money can't buy you happiness, and you shouldn't take it from everyone. Too bad it was a costly lesson for poor Marnie. And they part ways, and Raynell runs into Leon, and they share a sweet father-son moment about, bravery. And man, do I really like this Leon guy. Like, Leon, he meets up with Lisa, and he discusses Raynell, and Lisa finds out that he's going to go see his girlfriend and not study. And I gotta say, I am simping for Lisa and Raynell at this point. I mean, this guy stepped up for Raynell and her both big time. We go back and see an Asian fellow walking down the halls that appeared earlier, and this actor would later go on to become Marvel's Wong, because it is Benedict Wong way earlier into his career, just like Letitia Wright. Vincent, or Wong, gives the MILF, Heather, the price of buying the weed, which, as she mentioned earlier, would be a whole lot cheaper and not enough to get her flat. Raynell overhears this, and he takes matters into his own hands, thus making the worst mistake of the season. He goes straight to Della and Duchesne, and they make a bill to get the exact amount Heather would need for her flat, and Duchesne's pretty impressed with it, and Raynell agrees to the deal. But of course, Sully reminds me why I hate him so much when he interjects with, why pay 20 when you can have it for free, implying he's just gonna rob him. Next, we discover that Bobby Rakes may not be the top boy, and he gets his orders from a man named Joe, who's reminding him he's the supplier, and since all the killings happen, he can go try and work with the Turks instead. Little did I know how important this line about the Turks would be next season. Keep that in mind. Duchesne and Shelley and Driz are back on the road, but they're not selling anything due to the high police presence. Duchesne noticed that Sully is carrying around the gun that he killed Lee with, and Sully just brushes it off as protection to not get stabbed like their friend did in the last episode. Duchesne gets a call from Bobby Rakes, and it's Bobby wanting him to meet him alone without Sully, and this is definitely causing the rift between them. Lisa and Heather are having a chat, and we find out more about the abuse she went through with Wayne, who happens to be Raynell's dad, and then Heather goes into labor. Raynell's with the cutter, and I gotta call this out. Like I said, I'm from Colorado, and I know a thing or two about growing, and if these plants are getting cut, they're not gonna be ready for a whole nother month at least. There's a whole drying and curing process that needs to be done, and they're just acting like, they're ready. It's not. Anyway, He gets his picture or sample and once again impresses Duchesne, and Duchesne agrees to pay for him. Duchesne goes to inform Sully of his intention to pay Raynell when Sully still wants to rob him. Duchesne tells him nothing should happen to him since he wants Raynell to join up. Sully agrees, but once Duchesne leaves, he tells Driz he won't do that, and I just hate Sully. He just keeps wanting to be the bad guy here. Raynell goes to see Heather, who just had her baby, and he informs her of the new deal, and she rightfully panics, but Raynell tries to assure her that she's wrong. But we know she wasn't, because when Raynell leaves, Driz is right behind him to follow him. Letitia meets up with Jim in his hiding spot, where she confesses that it was her who told Driz about the spot, and they share a tearful apology and forgiveness hug. Driz finds the farm by following Raynell while Lisa visits Heather, and Heather confesses that she had Raynell helping with the farm, and Lisa smacks the taste out of this woman's mouth. Like, in the middle of this maternity ward, it's open, and like just calls her a bitch to her face.
You bitch! You're supposed to be...
She again gets the location and then calls our guy Leon to meet at the farm. Raynell comes down and Sully is waiting for him and easily takes the bag away. Leon steps in and intervenes, and a fight ensues, and it appears that Leon does have the upper hand, but just like that, Leon is shot. Man, did this hit hard for me as part of the season finale. I was like just so rooting for our guy here. Duchesne goes to meet with Sully about the death of Leon, obviously angry about a third death on the estate and another innocent person again. This scene here, it puts me on Team Duchesne, because just the way that Sully just tries to brush it off like shooting someone is something that could just happen and not the deliberate act of him grabbing the gun and pulling the trigger in a fist fight. Duchesne takes the murder weapon and he makes a call to Bobby Rakes about what they discussed earlier. We cut to Lisa and Raynell, who's in the police station, with Raynell obeying the oldest law there is in the hood, which is snitches get stitches, and he doesn't say who shot Leon. Duchesne meets with Bobby, and it looks like he's about to do the smart thing and let Sully take the fall, but instead shoots Rakes and he makes it look like a suicide. Duchesne head backs to Sully, and we are treated to that chaotic crescendo music from the first episode again, as Duchesne lets Sully know Rakes is dead because he wanted Sully dead, but he would never cross Sully.
But you're my boy. I'm gonna do you nothing. No matter how fucking stupid you are.
We see them part ways, with Duchesne clearly letting him know from now on he's the leader, and he departs with Driz in tow. As the music continues, we see Lisa and Raynell walking home as they see Duchesne arrive home too. As the music gets louder, Raynell puts out a kitchen knife, presumably like the one he used with his dad, and goes after Duchesne. They tussle, and Duchesne tries to explain it wasn't him at all, and that he's been backing him all the way. Thankfully, Lisa arrives and was able to separate the two, but also she puts her foot down that she doesn't want Duchesne around him anymore. The next morning, Raynell is walking with Jim and gets a surprise package from Duchesne. He delivers it to Heather, and it was the $20K after all, and she was able to get her flat. Duchesne now meets with his supplier, Joe, now that Bobby Rakes is gone. Joe says he feels like Bobby was gift-wrapped for the police, implying he knows it was him, but he kind of just laughs it off, and considering he looks very impressed with Duchesne. They agree on a deal, and next we see Vincent, Jim, and Chantal in an empty grow house as Vincent explains how much it would be to get the whole operation going. He gives them a deal that he will give them equipment in exchange for the first crop, and that the first crop's probably worth about $10K. This is very important to remember for next season. We then go to Raynell overlooking the city as Tear This City Down plays in the background, as we continue to see Raynell's point of view overlooking the state, and we fade to the credits. Man, what a first season, and I think I've watched this at least 15 times over at the time of writing, and with each rewatch it gets better and better. There's just so many little things that you won't catch the first time or maybe even the second time, but it's been worth the watch. And I can agree with people calling this the UK version of The Wire. It has the same intensity with characters you can relate to, especially grow attached to, and of course hate or love to hate in case of Sully with me. As I go on with each visit of each season, I'll connect the dots for you all. So thank you all for tuning in and listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see when we have our next video for Top Boy Season 2. Peace.